Minions & Monsters is one of the most unique movies from Illumination's biggest franchise, turning the company into a real pebble in the shoe of Disney and DreamWorks. But did you know that the only thing that doesn't change in the movies of the little yellow beings and their boss is the absurd amount of hidden secrets? For example, one of the biggest Easter eggs is a real mockery of Disney, and it appears right at the beginning of Despicable Me 3. In the scene, the Minions are piloting high-speed mini-submarines through the sea, until two clownfish are mercilessly hit by Gru's servants, who simply burst out laughing. These two little fish are not there by chance. In fact, they are the main characters of Finding Nemo, Marlin and his son, Nemo himself. Showing the Minions running them over so naturally is a very direct way for Illumination to warn that their movies are running over Disney's movies. So, which of the two studios do you prefer? Another reference to the Mickey Mouse studio is right at the beginning of the first Despicable Me. The scene shows a family traveling through Egypt, and if you look closely, the boy in this family is wearing a black shirt with a skull on his chest. This strongly resembles an essential character from the first Toy Story movie, Sid. It takes a lot of innocence to think that this is just a coincidence and not an intentional reference to one of the competition's most important animated films. Still in the first movie, released in 2010, many did not notice an artistic detail that is not in Gru's house, but in the Bank of Evil. We're talking about the huge painting that appears right next to the bank boss's desk. This painting is an obvious parody of a classic painting of Napoleon Bonaparte. The big difference is that the bank director himself was put in Napoleon's place, which only proves how stuck up he is. Besides this painting, there is another one that is even more famous, the Mona Lisa, a painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Seriously, this is the most well-known work of art in all of humanity. And guess what? It is in Gru's house. The most fun part of it all is that both the Mona Lisa and the Starry Night are not in Gru's bedroom, but in the girl's bedroom, which, honestly, is a very cute touch. By the way, it is pretty funny to think that, besides the lethal weapons, Gru's house has several works of art, possibly stolen. One of them is the famous canvas The Starry Night, painted by Van Gogh, one of the most brilliant artists in history. Could this be the original painting? Despicable Me 3 starts with a priceless pink diamond being stolen by the villain, Balthazar Brat. It is the type of classic scene that seems to have come straight out of an old spy movie. And the truth is that thinking this is not absurd at all. This jewel looks a lot like the pink diamond we see in the Pink Panther movie. The entire plot of this classic movie is exactly about the theft of this diamond. So there is no way this similarity is just a coincidence. Speaking of the Minions, have you ever stopped to wonder why they turn purple when they are transformed into monsters in the second movie? First, it was necessary to give them a different look so that the audience would understand that something was wrong. However, the choice of this color was not random. Purple is known for being the opposite color to yellow on the color wheel. Therefore, if the Minions became the exact opposite of what they were, it makes perfect sense that their color changed to purple. A true masterstroke by the movie's creators. A little earlier in this same movie, we notice another one of those bizarre pranks by the Minions. Only this time, the thing was much riskier. This happens in the scene that shows the Minions working in the jelly factory. In the background, two of them are messing around and hitting hammers on each other's heads, until one ends up fainting, and his partner runs worried to try to wake him up. As soon as the fainted Minion wakes up and shows that he is fine, the other one is relieved and starts kissing his face several times. These guys really get into some crazy stuff when they are left unsupervised, right? Good thing they are tough enough to handle those hammer blows. There are several scenes focused on the Minions, and the cool thing is that many of them feature very peculiar little jokes. In the second movie, there is a moment where they throw a mega beach party. The incredible thing is that in the middle of all that confusion, we see one of them give a super passionate look to another Minion, as if he were flirting, or at least pretending to flirt, since we know how much they love to goof around. The scene where Gru tries to break into Vector's house to steal the shrink ray is hilarious. But so much happens that a lot of people don't even notice that while Gru struggles to get in, Vector is chilling out playing a Nintendo Wii. Since the first movie came out in 2010, this was Nintendo's top-of-the-line console at the time. the Wii was released in 2006, and its successor, the Wii U, would only hit the market in 2012, 2 years after the movie. Gru started the first movie as a villain, but he became a great hero throughout the franchise. We can notice how focused he was on evil just by taking a look at the decoration of his house. For example, the painting of Jesse James, one of the worst outlaws from the Wild West era, hanging on the ceiling. Yeah, Gru worshipped great supervillains and outlaws from the past, including real-life ones. Every movie in the franchise always ends playing a very famous song from the 80s or 90s. At the end of the second movie, during Gru and Lucy's wedding party, we see a small group of minions dressed in the outfits of the band Village People, which was famous precisely for their bright and over-the-top clothes. Before we continue, just a quick heads up. If you also enjoy movies, series, and cartoons, click the subscribe button right now, alright? And since we are talking about musical references, we cannot forget the scene of Gru and Lucy's wedding at the end of Despicable Me 2. Like in any proper wedding, we had minions dressed in white playing an emotional song. That look was not a fashion trend pulled from their crazy minds. In fact, it is the exact same style of clothing worn by the singers of the Backstreet Boys, the boy band that was insanely successful between the 90s and the 2000s. These movies also always find a little time to praise classics from various eras. In Despicable Me 3, the minions are arrested, but it doesn't take long for them to take over the jail. At this moment, they start dancing in a way that is way too reminiscent of the music video for Jailhouse Rock, the great hit by Elvis Presley. The most fun part is that the target audience for Illumination's movies is children, and most of them don't know this song. Even so, the creators put this kind of Easter egg in thinking about the older fans, and also those kids who enjoy a good classic. Besides the homages to other children's works, Despicable Me also brings more obscure references. This becomes clear in one of the funniest scenes of the second movie. When Gru starts investigating El Macho, he ends up having to fight the villain's pet chicken. The chicken seems much smarter than it should be, and goes under Gru's clothes only to burst out, blowing a hole in his shirt. This is a direct reference to the epic scene from the movie Alien, in which the baby alien escapes from the host's stomach. Except the original movie is infinitely more cruel and scary than Illumination's parody, especially since we are talking about a huge rated-R horror movie. We have already talked a lot about the school for villains, but the building itself also hides a secret. It is a very clear allusion to Disney. The place looks way too much like the classic castle we see in the opening of almost all the studio's movies, and in the theme parks like Disneyland. No animation studio can resist taking a jab at Disney, and Illumination did no different. The car that Gru drives to go meet his old villain friends from his school days is already incredible on its own, but the best detail of all is on the vehicle's license plate. The code is DM090710. And yes, every single letter and number there holds a secret. Starting with DM, it is the acronym for Despicable Me, and the numbers represent exactly the release date of the first movie in the United States, July 9th, 2010. After all, we can never forget where it all started, right? A very cool detail that almost everyone ignored is that the principal of the supervillain school has a tie to a very famous character in the franchise, Dr. Nefario. Yes, the genius who creates all the weapons for Gru. The principal is simply the mother of that crazy scientist. We can find this out by paying attention to the shelf in her office, which is full of picture frames showing the two together, in very classic mother and son moments. In the fourth movie of the series, Gru attacks a high school for supervillains, and we find several curious things in the scenery. One of them is the image of a young guy wearing a green hat in the principal's office. It might seem like just a normal painting at first, but anyone who knows everything about Illumination's movies will notice that this hat is the exact same one worn by the Onceler in the Lorax movie. Since the Onceler almost destroyed the environment with his company, it makes perfect sense to have a portrait of the guy in a school for villains. Despicable Me 4 is one of the movies that most delivers this kind of detail. In it, some minions are transformed into superheroes, the so-called Mega Minions. It was already expected that some superhero movie parody would happen, and they did not disappoint. At a certain point, one of the Mega Minions needs to use his body-stretching power to stop a runaway train. The way the scene happens is identical to the epic sequence from Spider-Man 2 from 2004, where Peter Parker spends all his webs trying to hold the train. Even those who have never watched this movie run the risk of having already seen a picture of this scene. That's how iconic it is. We've reached the end of this video, but if you like having your mind blown, this is the right place. That's why we left 2 really good videos for you to click, watch, and best of all, stay with us.